Okay, I'd like to spend a few minutes to talk about charts. Most of the charts can be downloaded for free at the NOAA website at nauticalcharts.noaa.gov. You can download the latest individual charts from this site, or you can just use the RNC viewer. The benefit of the RNC viewer is you can immediately just pick up any spot you want on this global chart here. We're interested in the San Francisco Bay Area, so let me put my cursor over that, and let's zoom in here to San Francisco. We'll drill all the way down and continue drilling down until we start getting some details here. And this is probably the chart that you're used to seeing on most of the boats on the bay. Um, I like using the individual charts though. The individual charts are the latest. They have the latest updated information. So I have the San Francisco chart downloaded already, and let's take a look at that. So this is called the entrance to San Francisco Bay. It's also referred to as chart number 18649. I'm going to assume that most of you know how to read a chart, but I want to go over a couple of basic details as it relates to figuring out what the low tides are at your departure port and your destination port. Okay. So the brown area is all land. When you look at this, the first time that I looked at a chart, it looked totally weird to me. I just couldn't figure it out for at least 5 or 10 minutes before it kind of sunk in as to what I was actually seeing. So what you're seeing here is the brown area is the land. This is the city of San Francisco here, across the bay. Here's Oakland, here's Berkeley, Richmond, and over here the Marin Peninsula. What you're seeing here in the blue and white colors are the waters of the bay. The white color indicates deep water, the blue color indicates shallow water. And the numbers that you're seeing sprinkled throughout the chart indicate what the average low tide is at that spot. So let me zoom in a little bit here, and let's take a look at this line here that's separating the deep water from the shallow water. If you come down this line, pretty much anything over 37 feet is considered deep water. Anything 36 and below is considered shallow water. Now, if I zoom out and take a good look at this chart, you can see that most of the bay is shallow. Look at all this blue here, and blue, and blue, and blue down here. The deep water is pretty much the middle of the bay, and everything else is very shallow. Now, if we come in on the east part of the bay, which is where you really need to be careful of if you're sailing on the east part of the bay, you can see that most of the low tide numbers are very low. The Richmond Inner Harbor low tide can be as low as 4 feet, 4 feet, 4 feet, 5 feet here. Coming out of the Berkeley Yacht Harbor, it's 6 feet and 5 feet coming up to this wall here. And even if you came a third of the way into the bay, you still have areas here that are only 6 feet at low tide. So if you have a large draft on your boat, and it turns out to be low tide and you're not paying attention, it's easy to run aground on most of San Francisco. It's very easy to run aground. So you need to pay attention to your tides in these areas. So I like to plan my charters 30 days in advance after picking a good day that I think is going to work for both the tides and the currents. By planning 30 days in advance, I'm pretty much guaranteed to get the boat that I want and took a great day. Having said that, I have a charter coming up on the 18th of August, and what I like to do to prepare for my charters, the first thing I do is book my boat 30 days in advance, so I get the boat that I want. The next thing I like to do is to plan out some strategies. So for this charter, we're going to be leaving from Ballina Bay, Alameda. We'll be going to Angel Island for lunch, getting off the boat for about an hour, then getting back on the boat and sailing the upper bay. We'll be tacking along the Golden Gate Bridge here, coming down to the city front, and then we have another stop off at McCovey Cove. But the first thing I need to do is determine what is the low tide for my port of departure. So let's come down here to Alameda. And we'll zoom in real tight here to Ballina Bay. This is the Ballina Bay area right in here. You can see the 7 foot tide marker comes all the way in and down to our harbor and all the way to the back. So all this coming around here and coming out is all at the 7 foot level, leading all the way out to the bay. When they do some dredging here, it can be as deep as 8 feet, but I would go at 7 feet just to be safe. Okay. So now that I know my low tide at Ballina Bay is 7 feet. What I also like to do on my charters is I actually take screenshots, snippets of the individual areas from my departure port to my arrival port, just to have them, and I print them out and I put them on a binder, just in case your app fails. So I have a snippet over here, an example of the Ballina Bay. Let me pull that up for you. So this is the same area that you just saw with some notations here indicating that it's 7 feet. Check the draft of your boat. And I've actually indicated with a yellow highlight that 7 foot, and the safest way to depart our harbor at 7 feet is along this line here, coming out here. Okay. It's also the safest entry point at low tide, although I don't recommend entering at too much of a low tide into our harbor. Over here in red, indicated to watch out for this 2 foot shelf. It's very dangerous. You need to avoid that by all costs. You don't want to run aground on this 2 foot shelf. We do have a couple of buoys here marking that, so just remember right red returning to the 2 buoys here. We also have an obstruction here. This is a dangerous outcropping of rocks. At high tide, you can barely see them. So when you enter the harbor, just be careful you don't smack into those rocks or you're going to shred your boat. Now, if you take out the same boat on every charter, for example, if you own a boat and you know that your draft or the length of your draft is 6 feet, then that's an easy thing for you to remember. You don't have to worry too much. It's always going to be 6 feet. But if you're a charter like I am and you take out different size boats, the larger the boat, the larger the draft's going to be. So we need to be more attentive to what the tides are doing on our charter dates, because those drafts can change from the small boats to the large boats. At any rate, so this is our departure port at Alameda, Ballina Bay. Our low tide there is average of 7 feet. The next thing I want to also check is what the low tide average is at our destination. Our first destination is going to be Angel Island. So let me come back to the chart here, and let's go up to Angel Island. Take a look at that, see what's going on up there. Angel Island, and our destination is going to be Ayala Cove, and we can see here that the average low tide is 9 feet. Okay, there is a little 6 foot area over here that you have to be careful of, but for the most part, the cove is 9 feet. So I know that my departure port is going to be 7 feet. My first destination port is going to have an average low tide of 9 feet. We'll get off for lunch at Angel Island, get back on the boat, and enjoy sailing the afternoon, best winds down, and we'll be tacking along the Golden Gate Bridge, weather permitting. After we leave Angel Island, we'll come down here and do some tacking back and forth, let everybody have a chance of getting some photos in with the bridge behind them, and also sailing the infamous wind slot, or called the wind tunnel, the slot. After we're done there, we're going to be returning via McCovey Cove, where we're going to make another stop off. I also cut out chart snippets for the various places that I'm going to visit, like I mentioned. And I also have one for Angel Island. I'll show you that one. This is a chart snippet for Angel Island. Again, Ayala Cove is 9 feet average low tide, and put notations here. The reason that I print these out and put them in a binder is in case your app fails, or you run out of power, or your GPS on your boat fails. You have a handy reference of the local conditions as far as the tides are concerned. And for the most part, most sailors get used to what the low tides are at Angel Island, but I like to have a printout in case something happens to me. One of my crew members can pick up that chart and understand what's going on. So that's a snippet that I've prepared for Angel Island that I also take out with me on a binder on every charter. After visiting Angel Island and sailing the Upper Bay, we're going to end up at McCovey Cove. Let's take a look at what's going on down there at McCovey Cove. Okay, and McCovey Cove is just south of the Bay Bridge down here. And this is McCovey Cove here. AT&T Park is here. McCovey Cove also has an average low tide of 9 feet. So I know that for my sailing day, I'm going to be departing from a harbor whose average low tide is 7 feet. I'm going to be visiting Angel Island, whose average low tide is 9 feet. I'm going to be visiting Ayala Cove, whose average low tide is also 9 feet. I also have a snippet that I've printed out for McCovey Cove, and here's that snippet. Same thing, I put notations in here indicating that the average low tide is 9 feet. That goes into a binder and goes with me wherever I go. In sending out my notifications to my crew, I include copies of all these chart snippets. So everybody has a copy of all these charts and has a good indication of what we're going to be doing for the day. Now let's talk a little bit about strategy. Now, for those of us that sail out of Alameda, we know that it is a long haul from Alameda to Angel Island. It's approximately 11.2 nautical miles, and even if you were motor sailing in a beeline doing 6 knots, it's going to take you almost 2 hours to get there. So my strategy when I'm planning ahead of time is to pick a day early in the morning when the bay is full and there's an ebb tide going out. That ebb tide, that ebb current will help us in the morning, and we can ride that ebb current all the way out to the upper bay, and that'll help us get up to Angel Island much faster, as opposed to leaving when there's a flood tide coming in that you'll be battling against. Okay, so my strategy is to pick a day when the bay is full and there's an ebb tide going out, get us up here. At the same time, at the end of the day, when the flood starts coming back in, we can ride that flood tide in, and that'll help us get home much quicker. So now that I know what my average low tides are for my departing harbor and my destination harbors, the next thing we want to do is to actually check the tide tables to find out what the tide is actually going to be doing on the day you're going out and how it's going to affect the draft of the boat that you're taking out. And for that, we need to visit tides next. Okay, I'd like to spend a couple of minutes and talk about tide tables. The tide tables can be found also at the NOAA Tides and Currents address, and that's tidesandcurrents.noaa.gov. It'll bring you to this main page here, and if this is the first time that you've used it, the first thing you need to do is to identify your area of interest, and the easiest way to do that is to come over here to Products, click on Products, come down to NOAA Tide Predictions, click on that, then come down and find the state of California, and then here are listed all the different coastal areas. Come all the way down to San Francisco Bay, and I'm interested in the Alameda Naval Air Station. This is the closest station to Ballina Bay, so I'm going to click on that, and it defaults to the closest day. Let me drill in on today. For some reason, it's not automatically going to today's day. It's a day off, so let's do this, and we'll plot this. Okay, so this is the current time. It's 6:19 p.m. This green line will tell you that this is the current line, the current date time, and this is what the tides are doing right at this moment. So right now there's an ebb tide, and the next thing I want to do is to pick the day that I intend to sail, and I want to pick a good day. This wouldn't necessarily have been a good day because in the morning you had this flood coming in, and in order to get up to Alameda, we'd have to fight this flood here. But I wanted to go over with you, for those of you who aren't familiar with tide charts, what you're looking at here is basically a grid, um, and usually the lowest line here represents the low tide average at whatever harbor you're leaving at. So we know that we're leaving at Ballina Bay Harbor. This line would represent our 7 foot mark. Okay. Um, Now, let me advance to a day that I know isn't going to be a good day to go sailing up to the Upper Bay. Let me go to August 10th. Pick your day here. And then you hit plot daily, and that'll remap it. So this is particularly a bad day for tides and currents, especially if you wanted to leave early in the morning. You can see we have a negative 1.9 low tide. Now, in this instance, whenever you have a negative tide, you're going to get another grid here. So this 0, 0, and typically on most tide charts, 0 represents the low tide at your harbor. So we know that we have 7 feet here at Ballina Bay, and about 5:30 in the morning, it's a negative 1.9 low tide. Now, the boat I'm taking out is a Beneteau Oceanus 38. It has a 6 foot 9 inch draft. Now, our low tide at Ballina Bay is 7 feet. So there's no way that I'm going to leave at 5:30 in the morning when this is 1 foot 9 low tide here, or negative low tide. My draft will be stuck in the mud. And even if I waited a couple hours, normally we leave about 9:30. And even if I left at 9:30, like right in here, there wouldn't be any low tide issues because we're high enough. But look, we're fighting a flood that's coming in, filling the bay. Okay, so this would slow us down, even if I left at 9 o'clock, 9:30ish. Fighting this ebb is going to make getting that 2 hours to Angel Island even harder, because we're fighting this flood current. So this wasn't a good day to even go out. You could do it, but it's not the best day. I could pick a better day, and I did pick a better day. And the day that I picked was August 18th, a Saturday. Let's take a look at that. And plot that. So on the 18th, at about our departure time, which will be about 9:30ish, 9:30 and 10, you can see we have a nice ebb tide all the way out till 12. Now this ebb tide is going to help us get to the upper bay much faster than if there was a flood coming in. Okay, so this is a better day. We'll be getting off the boat about 12 o'clock here for lunch on Angel Island. Spend about an hour, hour and a half, casting off about 1 o'clock. And about 1 o'clock, we'll be sailing the Upper Bay. By around 2, we should be over closer to the Golden Gate Bridge, just in time for a flood to come in. And we have a nice strong flood. We should have a nice max flood somewhere between 3 and 4 p.m. And this flood tide is going to help us push us back up into Alameda much faster than it would have been the other way around. So this is the day that I picked that we're going to be sailing on. I again print out this chart. And what's good about the NOAA site is you can actually tell it that you want to print the chart out, and it'll actually, you come over here to printer view, and it'll actually prepare this that you can either print to a printer, or you can print it to a PDF. I like printing it to a PDF, so I'm going to change that to a PDF. Okay, and when I save it, it'll print it out to a PDF file, and I can pick up this file and share this with everyone. Okay, so let me close that. A nice printout. Also goes in the chart, in the binder, on the cruise. Okay. Now, I've picked the Alameda Naval Air Station because that's the closest to my port. You should pick the closest to your port, whatever that is. Most people use the Golden Gate tides as a general reference for the entire bay, but they're not exactly the same. They can be off as much as a foot during a high tide, and can be off up to 6 inches during a low tide. Um, so if you're looking at the Golden Gate tides, and you're off by 6 inches and it's near low tide, you could still run into trouble. So it's best to use the station that's closer to your harbor, and instead of using the primary station like the Golden Gate, then going to the back of that and subtracting all those numbers to figure out what the tide is at the Alameda station, it's easier just to plug in the Alameda station and use that figure. And I have this address plugged in, so it defaults to my home port of Alameda when I open up tides and currents. That's something that you can do as well. So just quickly going over this table again on this day. This zero, this first line down here represents 7 feet for us. I have a 6 foot, 9 inch draft, and we have no low tide issues. Even at 6'9", I would be close to this line. We're going to be leaving between 9:30 and 10, and that's giving us a good 3 foot clearance under our keel. So we have no low tide issues at all on the morning leaving. Likewise, coming back during this flood, we definitely have no low tide issues coming home. Okay, so this is going to be a good day to sail. The only thing that we're waiting for now is what the winds are going to be doing and the weather. So next what we're going to do is we've checked our chart for our low tide at our harbor. We've checked the tide tables to determine what the tide is actually going to be doing. The next thing you want to do is to find out what the currents are going to be doing for the day. Okay. So for currents, I use the NOAA tide and current tables and come in here to Golden Gate currents. I do use the Golden Gate currents because they're a really good indicator of what's happening throughout the bay as far as the currents are concerned. Come down here to August. August 18th is right here. And then what I also like doing is taking a snippet of this as well. Let me grab that. And this is a snippet that I use, and I actually superimpose on that this yellow highlight so I can actually see what's going on here on this day. So as we mentioned, we're going to be departing in the morning between 9:30 and 10. Here at 10:24 in the morning, we can see we have a nice strong 2.1 knot ebb that's going to push us out into the bay. We have a slack tide about 1:30, which will be perfect for approaching the Golden Gate after lunch. And in the afternoon, we have a maximum flood current coming in about 4:14 in the afternoon. We have a 1.8 knot flood that'll push us in to home port in the afternoon. So we have a good 2.1 ebb in the morning. So if we're cruising at 6 knots, this will give us an extra couple of knots. We should be cruising about 8 knots in the morning. And then coming back, this 1.8 knots will help us get home faster. Again, I print this out. It goes in the binder, it goes on the boat, so everybody can know what those currents are doing. Okay, so we've covered our chart. We've covered our tides, and now we've covered our currents. So we know what our tides and currents are doing. So let's take a look at what the winds are doing for this day. I use the expanded 15-day forecast for a general weather report over the entire San Francisco area. Just gives us a kind of a general indication of what's happening. So for Saturday the 18th, we can see that it's going to be passing clouds mild. It is going to be warm, we know, 75 degrees with a 56 degree low. Here the winds are forecasted for 12, which is going to be nice if that happens. Anything above 10 is a great day. 15 would be perfect, but anything between 10 and 15 is a perfect time out on the bay. So it's predicted to be 12 miles an hour coming in from the west-southwest. I also take a snippet of this for my binder to take out on the boat with me, and I have that right here, and I highlight it again indicating what is forecasted. This also gets printed out and put on the same binder for the same charter date. So I have a good idea. It's going to be 12 miles an hour. It's going to be a very nice warm day. But for the winds, to actually zero in on what the winds are doing, I like using an app called Wind Finder. Wind Finder is a much greater focus on what's happening with the winds out on the bay. So for Wind Finder, let's bring up our Wind Finder app. And again, I have this program to the Bay Area. This is in real time. Today's Monday, 8/13, and this is what the winds are doing right now on the bay. Let's zero in here a little bit. And I'll explain this to you if you haven't seen Wind Finder before. This is my favorite that I added. This is what the wind is doing at the Golden Gate Bridge right now in real time. Actually, it's 2 p.m. on 8/13 right now. Let me come up here. Yeah, it is. It's 1:58, so it's 2 p.m. If I come up here and actually click on my favorites, it brings up what's going on right now. So right now, it's 8 miles an hour out at the bridge. Winds are west-southwest at 246. Likewise, I can close this. What's nice about Wind Finder is you can zero in anywhere on the bay and basically pick a spot, and it'll tell you what the wind is doing there. If I picked over here near Angel Island and just clicked on the chart, right now it's 8 miles an hour at Angel Island. If I clicked over here behind Treasure Island, it's also 8. And if I come down here to Alameda and take a look at Alameda, it's also 8. So 8 miles per hour average right now. But I want to know what the wind is going to be predicted for the 18th. So let me move it up to the 18th here. And I'm interested in the afternoon hours between 2 and 5. So for the 18th, according to Wind Finder out at the Bay Bridge, it says 7. So you can see it's dramatically different forecast from what the overall forecast was for the bay. When we looked at this chart here, it says 12 miles an hour west side from the west at 12, where Wind Finder shows it at 7 from the west. So that's the variable there. It'll be anywhere between 7, 10, maybe 12. I like it to be on the higher side. I would love a 15 mile an hour day. That's perfect for these big boats. But anyway, we will have some wind. There was a high air pressure system forecasted nearby, which is what's driving these winds to be lower. But we should have enough wind to at least have a good time out there. We'll monitor this up until the day of our sail. But for right now, we have a good indication that winds are anywhere from 7 to 12 from the west on Saturday. Okay, so let me close that. The next thing that I like to talk about is communication with you and the various members of your crew. It's really important to let everybody know what you as a skipper have in mind and to communicate that actively with the rest of your crew, especially whoever your first mate's going to be. So the way that I do that is I prepare a very detailed email with all this information. Let me give you an example of what that looks like. Okay, so this is an example of a standard email format that I use to communicate to my crew and the guests that are going to be on this particular charter. Basically, I include all this information that we've covered up here in these attachments, what the latest winds and weather are showing, which we saw was 7 to 12 miles from the west southwest. Any crew updates. I tend to always travel with another certified skipper or someone who I know I trust and I've sailed with before. But usually I have another skipper along with me just to make sure that if anything goes wrong, I have somebody qualified on that boat that can bring us back in and knows our harbor. Then I list our VIP guests, whoever they might be. I'm not using any real names here for the privacy of my guests. Basically, I list here the crew and guest crew that are going to be on the boat, and if there's any open seats still available in case they want to contact somebody else. I give an overview of what the yacht is, its features that we're going to be taking out. I include tactical notes specific to this day. In this case, tactical notes attached to our destination, current tide and chart slices for the day. The Dulcinea Beneteau Oceanus 38 has a deep draft of 6'9". Alameda Ballina Bay, low tide is 7 feet. Attached Alameda predicted tides at 10 a.m. show no low tide issues for this boat with a good 3-foot clearance, followed by a nice ebb tide of 2.1 knots, which will help us get up to the upper bay much faster. Leaving Ballina Bay at 9:30, arriving at Angel Island at 11:30 for lunch. We have a slack tide at 1:35, just perfect for an approach to the Golden Gate Bridge, followed by a nice increasing max flood of 1.8 knots by 4 p.m., which will get us home faster. Again, there are no low tide issues. Returning to Alameda via McCovey Cove, AT&T Ballpark. Then give an itinerary. This is really important so that everybody's on the same page. Clubhouse opens at 8. 8:45 a.m. to 9 a.m. PDF life jacket fitting. 9 a.m. to 9:30, we're going to do a safety briefing at the dock and pre-cruise check of the boat and systems. Plan to cast off at 9:30. 9:30 to 10 a.m. we'll cast off. Do a little bit of quick tacking and jibing practice. Make sure everybody's on the same page. This will give anybody who hasn't been on a sailboat before a chance to have a feel for the yacht before we head up to the upper bay, including driving and learning how to use the boat controls if we have time. But if anyone feels uncomfortable during this practice, we can drop you back off at our docks before heading up to the upper bay. Think about your guests that have never been on a boat. Instead of thinking about yourself before you take them up there. Nobody wants to be stuck on a boat sick for the entire day. This gives you a chance to drop them back off before heading up. If that's all good, then about 11 o'clock we'll head up, beeline motor sail to Ayala Cove, grab a slip at Angel Island State Park with a close flyby of Alcatraz. If we don't arrive in time for a slip at Angel Island, we'll take a mooring ball at Sausalito Yacht Club and have lunch aboard. The plan is from 12 p.m. to about 1:30 to have lunch and get off the boat at Angel Island. Don't forget to bring water, a lunch, and snacks you can eat during the day, and of course your favorite beverages. Bring your own. Then from 1:30 to 4, probably more like 1:30 to 3, we'll enjoy sailing the Upper Bay, San Francisco, during the best afternoon winds, rotating crew positions, circumventing the bay from Tiburon, Belvedere, and Sausalito. We plan on tacking along the Golden Gate Bridge, weather permitting, letting anyone who wishes to participate drive the boat for absolutely awesome photo ops of the Golden Gate Bridge with you at the helm. We will also be sailing the infamous Slot Wind Tunnel, weather permitting, finally heading home, down along the city front, Palace of Fine Arts, High Street Pier, Aquatic Park, Pier 39, Port of San Francisco. 4 o'clock to 4:30, we'll do a stop off at McCovey Cove. There's no giant home games during our charter, but it's still nice to check out the cove and stay in from the water if you haven't experienced this view. Then from 4:30 to 6 p.m., return to Alameda home port. Now it's up to the weather, cooperate to give us clear sailing and good wind. Then I also include, again, for the benefit of my guests, First timer valuable tips, please read. There will be a test. Just kidding. Important, make sure to bring any medical medications if you need to. Let them know that we have several marine radios on the boat. But if you have an emergency, it'll take time to get back to home port or the nearest dock or for the Coast Guard to arrive should I have to radio in an emergency. Let friends and family know the itinerary. I emphasize that they should wear sneakers, white or not marking sole tennis shoes. It's okay to wear rubber-soled shoes and sandals, but absolutely no boots, high-heeled shoes, or black-soled shoes that might mark up the boat. Encourage them to bring comfortable, loose-fitting, warm and cold weather clothes, just for wind, sun, for any possible spray coming off the boat. Now, people that sail with you all the time are going to know these things. People who have never been on a sailboat and never sailed on the bay will not know these things. So this is why I include all this extra detailed information so that they don't show up not prepared. Um, they should stuff their sailing bag with anything they need for the day. Better to have everything you might need on the boat just in case. If you have a nylon waterproof jacket, I'd bring that just in case. Because even on a nice sunny day, there can be spray off the bow of the boat for a number of reasons, like wakes from other boats. Also, the temperatures and winds in the bays are currently changing. It can be 65 degrees and comfortable 1 minute and shift catching a cold puff and a snap. So give them information on that. Make sure that they bring a hat, sunblock, very important sunglasses if you don't want to burn your skin, scalp, or protect your eyes from the glare of the water. Even if the sun isn't shining, you can still get sunburn on an overcast day. People that don't bring sunglasses or a hat can be in for a miserable day, and that little thing can make the difference between a pleasant day on the bay and a bad day. Gloves, everyone works on my boats, but I provide gloves. Guests are exempt. Make sure they bring their cameras and binoculars for fantastic shots of the city front, bridges, and marine life that few people actually experience live. Make sure to bring snacks, a lunch you know you can eat, water, and your favorite beverages of choice. Let them know we have a working stove and oven on board if they like to learn to learn to use a propane stove and heat up any meals. Open containers are okay for my guests only. We have a fridge to keep the beverages cold. The yacht is also equipped with all cookery, including cups, glasses, pots, pans, plates, knives, forks, and spoons. Paper plates and cups are recommended for fast cleanups. First time sailing, don't know if you might get seasick. Do not eat a heavy meal the night before the sail. Stay away from heavy oily soups and full course dinners. Do not eat a heavy breakfast before the sail. Eat very light if this is your first time out. That way if you feel uncomfortable, your stomach won't be forced to throw all that gunk up. I have Dramamine and ginger in my first aid kit just in case. And you can snack and eat on the way until lunch if you don't have any issues. Then I put a little thing in here. Please, for the courtesy of everyone, prepare early the night before the sail and arrive at the clubhouse Saturday, August 18th at 8:45 promptly to be fitted for your freeloader PDF life jacket. Let them know that weather and crew updates to follow as we near our sail date. Today's now Tuesday. They'll get another update probably Friday, the day before the sail. Let them know what your cell phone number is. And if they have any questions, I always give them the contact information of the port and club that I'm sailing out of, along with a Google map of how they can call the club if they have any issues. So communication with your crew and your guests is also a critical part of enjoying a great sailing day on the bay. Next thing that I'd like to talk about is safety. Okay, so this is an example of the standard safety briefing that I perform at the dock on just about every charter. The only difference between this safety briefing and one for Colgate 26 is that on the Colgate 26s need to announce stepping on, stepping off because those little boats rock back and forth. Pretty much everything else is the same. So it's important to go over this with people who have never sailed before. It's important to go over with this with those who claim they have sailed but don't have very much experience. I never take it for granted anybody who tells me that they've sailed before has actually sailed before, unless I've sailed with them, and can view their qualifications. It's important. It looks nerdy. Sometimes it takes a couple of minutes to get through, but I can say in the last 5 years, no one has ever slipped, fallen, or gotten hurt on any of my charters, or even fallen overboard. And that's because I do a thorough safety briefing at the dock on every charter, unless it's people that I've sailed with before. So let's talk about this. Safety first. Everyone wears a PFD and always above the deck while underway at all times on the boat. I cringe when I see people sailing without a life jacket, and sometimes I even see other club boats letting people sail without life jackets. That is a no-no. Always insist that your crew and your guests wear their PFDs while you're on the water and that boat is moving, and if they don't want to do that, they can't get on my boat. Next thing, make sure do not board the boat handling bags. They are to pass the bags to someone on the boat or firmly place the bags on the deck first, then step aboard. Watch the gap between the boat and dock. Many accidents happen between the boat and the dock, and people trying to put their bags up on that deck. Point out the hazards on the boat. The number one hazard, of course, everyone knows, is the boom during tacking upwind, especially dangerous downwind during jibing. Keep your head below the boom. The lines and sheets, do not sit on or let any of the lines wrap around your legs, feet, arms, or especially fingers. Keep those lines away from your extremities. Keep a good lookout for any lines in the water, and definitely away from the stern of the boat and its motor. Caution them about the companionway steps. This is another critical place where people can get hurt very easily. They always must face the steps and use the handholds to avoid serious back injury during an accidental slip. And I enforce this whether we're docked, slipped, and especially when we're underway. You need to face those steps. Next, to prevent falling off or injury, moving about on the boat. If you remember your training, one hand for the boat, one hand for you. Lower your center of gravity, crouch down when walking across the foredeck. Use the stanchion and lifelines for balance. You can point out that shrouds are the strongest part of the boat. You can point to them. Those are more better to hang on to. But the lifelines are designed for stability. They're not really designed to take the full balance, the full weight of a person. Next thing, falling off the boat. No one's ever falling off my boat, but it happens, so I have to cover this. Crew overboard. If anyone falls off the boat, the remaining crew members immediately become spotters. Immediately, no one takes their eyes off of anyone falling in the water. You know, on the bay, one moment something's there, the next moment it's not. So it's important for everybody to spot that person. I will assign someone to become that spotter who can take over pointing to where that person is. Everyone else is going to immediately start throwing anything that floats, definitely the ring buoy, fenders, anything that floats to create a debris field so we can see where that person is. And I'll begin what we call a quick stop maneuver or a life sling deployment, which is probably always appropriate on these big boats, where we can just throw you a line that has a sling around it, and we can pull you in. But if you are paying attention to one hand for you and one hand for the boat, you should never fall off this boat. Okay. Next, communication. The other thing that I cover when I cover falling off the boat is letting them know that before I can come and pick them up, the boat has to sail away from them a good 2.5 lengths before we make that turn to come back and get them for their own safety, so that we don't, accidentally damage them with a motor or run into them. So we get a good 2.5 boat lengths away, then circle around, and that spotter continuously points to that person in the water so that we don't lose sight of them. Okay. Next thing is communication. Everyone needs to be prepared to tack, ready about, prepare to jibe, jibe ho. There's several different terms to use to call out a tack or a jibe. Basically, let them know we're going to prepare. They give the signal that they're ready, and then we do the jibe or the tack. Other commands include heading up, heading down. You may be asked to move by the skipper or crew to move from where you're sitting to access boat controls. So let them know to be ready to move. Don't get too comfortable where they are. For first-time sailors, this is really critical to point out that sails make a lot of noise and loud luffing, flapping in the wind, especially when raising, lowering, furling, or unfurling sails during tacking and jibing, that this is normal so that they don't freak out when they start hearing those noises. Let them know that sailboats are designed to heel and tilt in the wind. A lot of people never knew that. They see sailboats out there, they don't think about the way they're tilted over to actually get on one. So let them know that tilting or heeling is normal, and that we'll let them know whenever there's going to be any what we call close hauled or beam reach sailing, which tends to make that boat heel over. And we always recommend that the sailing bags are stowed in one of the cabins on the deck floor, so that stuff doesn't spill over all over the floor. So let them know about heeling, that it's normal. I also let them know that we can control the heel if we need to. You know, we can release that main and level out the boat. But let them know that that's part of the experience of sailing. And then before departing or on the way out, we'll explain the self-tailing winches, how they work. And if there's electric winches, let them know how they work. On the big boats, normally it's 3 wraps clockwise, and 1 wrap on the lazy or none on the lazy side. Make sure that they understand to keep their thumbs upwards towards their body. Anybody who's going to be working a winch for you, go over this with them. Please don't take this for granted. We'll explain where the fire extinguishers are located on the boat, and how to start and stop the motor. We'll definitely explain what the boat is for, what the ring buoy is for, and especially the life sling device. I always go over to the life sling, pop it open, let them take a look at it, let them know how it's going to be deployed behind the boat if they fall off. That makes everybody feel comfortable that you know what you're doing. And then if they have any questions. And go over this before anybody steps aboard the boat, for anybody who hasn't sailed before. They will love you in the end for it. So that's a safety briefing that I give on every charter. And so once your safety briefing is completed, everyone can board the boat. At this point, you can begin your pre-sail check of the boat and systems. Make sure you check your rigging, make sure you check your engine, check your boat controls, all the various things on our check-off list, just to make sure that the boat is in good working order, and you can detect any problems before leaving the port. Make sure. Okay, and finally, I have one other recommendation to ensure that your sail charter is a fun and great experience for you and your guests. In addition to monitoring Channel 16, which we all know is important to do, which is the Coast Guard channel that would advise us of anybody needing help on the water, and any dangerous conditions out there that we need to be aware of. It's also the channel that we report in to report any problems that we might be having. One radio on the boat should always be tuned to monitor Channel 16. But another good station to monitor, and I monitored this one during my entire cruise, is Channel 14. That's the equivalent of air traffic control on the bay. If you monitor traffic on Channel 14, about every 10 minutes and even sooner than that, you'll get regular reports of the latest of any dangers on the bay, marine events, any racing regattas going on, the number of boats in those regattas, swimmers in the water, along with bay traffic, including tanker and cargo ships coming and going, and barge movements. There's a lot of barge traffic on the bay. So if you listen to Channel 14, you'll get all that information. And 14 is also a good channel to report any dangers that you see. If you see a big log floating across your bow on the bay and it's a pretty large chunk of wood, report it to channel 14 if you spot a piling or something like that. Yeah, so when you head out in the morning, by monitoring channel 14, you'll be advised of things that you didn't know that might be going on that morning, including things like swimmers in the water or even kayakers. And now the latest thing is wind sail racing and kite sail racing. All those events, you'll know what's going on before you get up to the upper bay, and you'll know what areas to be on the lookout for, and what areas to avoid when those events are going on. So monitor 16 and monitor 14, and I guarantee that'll help you with having a great day out there. All right, well, thanks for listening. I hope these tips help you on your next charter, and have a great time out there. Talk to you later. Bye.